Dave knows how.
Yeah, this rock has got a lot of the plastic mixed in it, and that was just part of the problem of taking it up. So part of this filtering system is going to be me picking out that plastic, and as you can see, it's got a lot of dirt in it. We're just going to run up here kind of slow and then lift up, get us a nice scoop, not too much, dump a little bit off of there, and as you can see, it's kind of dusty. I've got this thing at the maximum height. This is the hard hat area. That's a definite hard hat area when you're standing underneath that thing, spitting rocks off of it. But you gotta get this, I gotta get this plastic out of there. It's got a lot of plastic in it. I scoop it up and then I dump it. And that helps to kind of break it up a little bit. I don't want too much in the bucket. Since I got to raise it up so high, if I got too much in the bucket, it will, when I raise it up real high, it could flip back over onto the hood, and I don't want to scratch my hood up. So I try to not load a full load bucket. When you've got a full load bucket like that, you need to kind of rotate that thing back. See, when I brought this up, when I got to about right here, I started curling that bucket back that way. And then that way it won't come over on the hood. Now right here I can just go right on over. Got a lot of plastic in there. Back in the hard hat area. Welcome back to my channel. We're going to do a little video about the Super Shaker Soil Sifter. And this is a project's been going on for, I don't know, 3-4 years at least, maybe longer. Originally, I built this top platform, and it's 5 foot wide and 4 foot deep this way. So it's 5 foot by 4 foot, and it's framed. It's got expanded metal sheet on it. It's framed up with 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch angle iron. It's probably about 3/16 thick, which is probably not really thick enough, but it's what I had, so that's what I used. And originally I had 3 pipes coming out at the end of it, and I could drive the Kubota tractor bucket up in there and pick it up. And the way I was using it was I set it on some cinder blocks, and then I'd take a scoop of dirt and drop it on there and sift through it. And then when I got down, you know, I was sifting through it with the rake and by hand and the shovel. And then when it got where it was just roots left on there, or if I was doing rocks, just rocks left on there, then I'd pull the tractor up in there and lift the whole thing up. And it had 2 chains that came off the top. It came up and connected to the front of the bucket so it wouldn't fall down. And then I'd drive it on over where I wanted to and dump it. If it was roots, I'd just dump it in the woods. If it was rocks that I was trying to keep, then I'd just drive it over there and dump it where I was storing the rocks at. So that's how this platform got started. And the goal was to build the Super Shaker, and I had been looking at a bunch of different videos on YouTube and trying to get an idea of how to build it and how to go about it, what would be the most practical, inexpensive way to do it. And I started collecting steel, scrap, a lot of scrap metal, whatever I could find laying around, wherever. I did have to buy some steel, the shaft that turns in there, I bought that, but it's actually not shafting. It's actually just it's a piece of hot rolled 1 inch. And when it's hot rolled like that, it's round, but it's not really round. It's kind of egg shape almost. And I actually, thankfully, I've got a big lathe in the back. I actually had to dust off the South Bend 17-inch Tornado and chuck that shaft up in there and turn it enough where it would actually fit in the bearings, because like I said, it wasn't round like a shaft. It was kind of egg shaped. And but it was fairly straight. It didn't have no drastic bows to it or nothing. Not too bad. It did have a little bit of bow, but that just helped make it vibrate better. The hinge point right here I built out of black iron pipe. Basically, I just found 2 pieces of black iron pipe that just barely would not fit inside of each other. Chucked them up on the lathe, turned the outside of one, turned the inside of the other one, just a little bit, knocked just enough off of it to have like a sliding fit, and slid it up in there, and then cut that outer one into sections. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections, welded them, 2 of them to this top part and 3 of them to the bottom part, and then put the pin through there, and that created a hinge, and a heavy duty hinge at that. Don't have to worry about that hinge breaking, and you can't buy a hinge that good in a store, I can tell you that. You can forget that. Anyway, this rubber right here, I ended up putting rubber here across the back to keep anything from falling in or out this way or that way. And I put some around the sides too, and I'll move the camera around and show you some of that. This was rubber roofing that came off of the top of an RV. And about 20 years ago, I guess, I was doing a job at an RV dealership, and they was replacing a roof on an RV, and this was left over on the roll after they replaced the roof, and they took it wasn't enough to do anything with, so they took the rest of that roll and threw it in the dumpster. And so of course I went dumpster diving and pulled it out, figuring I'll use it somewhere one day, and this is somewhere one day. And it's been laying outside, so it's pretty gross. But hey, you know, it's gonna be good for this anyway. I added these wings on here because the bucket wasn't quite long enough. I could dump it in and I don't have to worry about falling off the side, so that worked out pretty good. And it does take a lot of the dirt out of the rock. It did a pretty good job. I ran about probably 15-20 bucket loads of this rock through here yesterday. Maybe not that much. After that, I was kind of wore out. Anyway, let's walk around and take a look at the rest of it. So over here on the side of it, we got this piece of pipe right here. It's just galvanized gas pipe, like a Schedule 40. And this is another piece of not galvanized. Well, this was galvanized, but I turned the galvanized off of it because I was going to weld on it. And if you've ever welded galvanized, you know what that's like. Whew! Galvanized poison makes you sick. So I just machined the galvanized off of it so I could weld it on there. But I've got a slip fit where this will slide up and down through here. So since this will slide up and down through here and it goes all the way across to the other side, it makes this top deck adjustable. So I can hinge it up, hinge it down, put it on pretty much whatever pitch I want to put it on. And that makes it nice. So anyway, this is the end of the shaft that turns right here. I didn't put off-center weight on there to give it any added vibration. It's actually just vibrating off the shaft that's there with nothing on it. And it vibrates plenty good for this. I was kind of scared. I made a weight to go on there, but my thoughts was if I put the weight on there and it gets to vibrating too much, it might eject some of this rock, you know, 10 feet away from this thing, and I don't want it 10 feet over there. I want it right here. So with no weight on it, it vibrates just enough that the rock just kind of goes down, goes down, goes down, and then falls off. And in my mind, that's a better fit for what I'm doing right now. Might not be, you know, I might need to put the weight on there if I just start sifting some soil or something like that, but to try to get the dirt out of the rock so I can reuse the rock, this is probably a better solution. Anyway, I went with plyboard around the base of this thing because, you know, I mean, I could have put sheet metal, but plyboard was a lot cheaper than sheet metal. And this was one of the things that I didn't have already collected. I actually had to go buy this day before yesterday. Yeah, day before yesterday, or might have been the day before that. But anyway, if I used sheet metal, it would have been a lot more expensive than a piece of plyboard. And if I hit it with the tractor bucket and it tore a hole in the sheet metal, it would be harder to fix. Replacing that piece of sheet metal would have been more expensive. If I hit this and knock a hole in it, it's going to be hard to fix, but I can buy a sheet of this plyboard a whole lot cheaper than I can buy a sheet of metal to go in there. So that's why I decided to go with the plyboard. It was cheap and limited money. I didn't have a lot of money to spend on the stuff that I didn't have, and there was a couple things that I didn't have that I did have to buy. The plyboard was one of those things. So anyway, I'm happy with the plyboard. I think it's going to be plenty strong enough, and as long as I don't ram into it with the tractor too hard, it should hold up. I may throw a coat of paint on it to keep the you know, the weather from taking its toll on it. All right, let's walk around the other side and take a look. So anyway, this is a tarp that I put over here because I ran out of rubber roofing. I didn't have that much. It was just the end of the roll, and I barely had enough to go around the three sides, but I certainly didn't have enough to go all the way down here. So, you know, Harbor Freight, this was pretty cheap. And the main reason for doing this is to keep the dust down. I mean, my throat's a little irritated now because it was just so dusty. How much did it help? I don't know. It was pretty dusty, but I'm sure it did cut down on a lot of it. Main thing was I didn't want dust, the front of the engine of the tractor being right here, I didn't want dust being sucked right into the air breather of the tractor. So that's why I went on and just threw a tarp up right here. Anyway, this is what the dirt looks like. It you know, comes out pretty good and sifted, and there's still some rock in there. And some of the small rock fits right through these holes, and so probably I may get another piece of screen that's got smaller holes in it that I can temporarily set on top of here, and then run this back through it again to get some of these smaller rocks out and just have soil. I don't know, I haven't really made up my mind yet. Might not be worth all that trouble, but you know, it did a pretty good job. I mean, you know, it's, yeah, you can see that rock had a lot of, see, there's another rock. That rock had a lot of dirt in it. That's a lot of dirt. So this next thing I'd like to show you is the springs on this thing, and there's 4 of these springs. And those springs were the big dilemma for this project. Was I couldn't get a straight answer out of anybody that I asked about what spring they used or where they got it from or anything like that. It's like a big secret. And originally I was going to use a leaf spring off that Jeep that I crushed with the tractor video. If you haven't seen that video, you might want to go check it out, with the Kubota tractor versus the Jeep. I was going to use the leaf springs off the rear axle, and I'd actually cut them all up and had it down to where it was just one leaf, and I was going to weld that in there, but it was going to make these two frames, because this is actually two frames. You got a bottom frame that goes around here, goes all the way around, and then you got this top frame that goes all the way around, and the top frame has the expanded metal on it, and the bottom frame is mounted to the hinge, and the spring goes in between the two, and so the top frame bounces on the bottom frame. And putting the leaf spring on there would raise this top frame considerably more than what it is right now. That's like about 4 to 6 inches, and putting that leaf spring on there, it was going to raise it up to like 12 inches. So I went online and was looking for springs. I couldn't find any. I emailed a couple of spring manufacturers to try to get some input. Nobody would give me any kind of input whatsoever as to what spring to use. And so I was in Lowe's actually to get the ply board, and I seen a set of springs for a storm door, and it was kind of weird, made kind of weird. It had a piece of steel that went up through one end and then through the other end, and it was kind of a funky looking thing, but this was the spring that was in there, and it was 2 of these springs in each pack, and if I remember right, they were $10 a pack. So 20 bucks I got all 4 springs, and when I looked online for springs, they were like $26 a piece. So that would have been over 100 bucks in springs for this thing, and I don't have that kind of money. So I went with this, not even knowing if it was going to work or not. It was worth the risk to me. So here's a view of the other side, and this is the bar that goes across the top. Hopefully it's showing up in the frame. And one of the problems that I had was when I welded the 2 ends on, it kind of was twisted, and so it wouldn't slide up and down, and I didn't account for that. So I cut the pipe in half and machined a bushing to go in this side and a stud to go in this side, and that stud goes inside that bushing, and so now these 2 pieces rotate like that inside one another. So even though they're a little bit off on the outside, they rotate enough that this whole thing will go up, and you can adjust this up and down. This is the shaft that actually turns and makes it vibrate. Like I said before, there's no counterweight on it, it just vibrates under its own thing, and I may add a counterweight. It's mounted up with pillow block bearings, and they're greasable pillow block bearings, and they were really cheap. I found them on Amazon. I can't remember what I paid for them, but it wasn't very much. I think it was like maybe 20 bucks for 2 of them. And so, I mean, that's, you know, that's kind of a no-brainer. That's pretty cheap. Oh yeah, the springs are just mounted up here with a piece of threaded rod. So I put a piece of threaded rod from right through the middle of the spring with a Teflon locking nut on each end, screwed it down, and I screwed it down till it's just barely touching. I mean, I can almost turn it with no load on it, and that seemed to work out pretty good. And I'm not sure if it's showing up or not, but here's an inside look at the hinge. I might be able to bring the camera in there a little closer so you can see that hinge a little better. So that's the hinge right there, and it basically consists of the hinge pin that slides through, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of pipe. I took one long piece of pipe, bored the inside out, took this piece of pipe, put it on a lathe, turned the outside so it would slide inside of there, and then I cut it into 5 equal sections, slid the pin through and set it up here and clamped it down, and then I spot welded this one, and this one, every other one. Then I set the top frame down on top and spot welded every other one again, this one and this one. And then I went on and fully welded them up. And so I've got one on each side. And on this one, on this end, I extended this hinge pin to go all the way out the end, and I've got the pulley hooked up out there, and we'll go around there. We'll move the camera around and I'll show you that idler pulley and what it looks like. Okay, so this is that hinge pin coming out right here, and the idler pulley is mounted right to the end of it. And so with the idler pulley here, that means we can have two belts, one going from this side of the idler pulley up to the shaft, and one going from this outside of the idler pulley down to the motor. The one going down to the motor's got a tensioner on it, spring-loaded tensioner, and it works pretty good. This was a belt that I had that was from off of a lawnmower deck, so it's kind of worn. It's old, it's worn. But, you know, I had it here already, didn't have to buy another one, so, you know, use what you got, right? This one I had to buy because I had to make it fit this pretty good so it wouldn't slip. And I don't know, I may eventually put a tensioner on here some kind of way. I just haven't figured out how I'm gonna do it. I might could mount it somewhere in here and have it come up and go down like that and still be able to rotate. I don't know. Haven't figured that part out yet. I mean, it works pretty good like it is, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So anyway, let's see, what else? So the reason why I did this two pulley system with dual belts, two belts, most all the other ones that I've looked at online had one belt, and the belt went from the shaft that spins and vibrates straight down to the motor, and then it had a tensioner down here that held tension on it with a spring, just like what I've got here on this one. But you lose adjustability. You can't adjust the deck as much, because when you lower the deck down, the belt's too long. And when you raise the deck up, then the belt is too short. So you got to constantly be changing belts. So with this setup, because I've got this idler pulley right at the hinge point, I can actually rotate this deck up or down, and the length of this belt will stay consistently the same no matter what position that I put it in. And this is like great. I mean, you know, it's like a no-brainer. To get around this, a lot of guys are buying an electric vibrator that gets mounted in the middle of the thing. They don't even have a gas engine on it. It's a vibrator that mounts in the middle of the basket, or the platform up there, and it plugs into electric cord, turn it on, and it vibrates. I don't know how much, but it vibrates. And that's what they're using. And then that way they can adjust up and down, and they don't have to, you know, worry about belts. I looked at the vibrating thing for about 5 seconds because if I remember correctly, and it's been a while, I mean, when I looked at it, it was, you know, when I started this thing, which was, you know, several years ago. It was kind of expensive. If I remember, I think it was $350 for that thing. And I knew I had motors here, and then my neighbor giving me this motor was just an added bonus, because I ended up not having to use one of the motors I had here. I can use this motor, and it works perfectly fine. And the shaft was cheap because I didn't buy shafting. I bought hot rolled, you know, round stock, and I just tried to, you know, I went over there to buy it, and I looked for the straightest piece I could find and got them to cut it 6 foot long. And then I knew it was going to be a little egg shape, so I chucked it up in the lathe and turned it just enough so that my 1-inch pulley would fit on here. So I did have to buy these pulleys because I didn't have them, and I had to buy this idler pulley, but they were relatively inexpensive. So anyway, that's about it in a nutshell. The power washer motor is actually still mounted to the power washer frame. I just used the frame it was mounted to as the mounting platform for the motor to be on, and it's not super steady great, but it's okay. And then the support for that was scrap metal that came from when the Kubota tractors come to the dealership, they're on a pallet, and nowadays those pallets are registered and they all have to be returned back to the dealer or they have to pay a deposit. But back years ago, the pallets weren't registered and they didn't return them. They got the darn things in, and the pallets got stacked up in a big pile, and I don't know what happened to them. I guess scrap man came in and got them. But anyway, my son was working for Kubota at the time, and so I went over there and with the trailer, and I got a couple of those metal pallets that the tractors get shipped on, and that's what that bracket's made out of. One of those. So that's what this idler is made out of, part of that. And there's a couple things on here made out of that. So it was, you know, it was okay metal. It wasn't the thickest metal I've ever welded on, but it served its purpose. So anyway, this was a slow process building this thing, because you know, I'd start on it and then something would come up and I'd have to do something else, or I wasn't feeling good, you know. And I was really rolling on it pretty good back before Christmas, and then right after Christmas came, of course, and I stopped. My mom got sick and I was having to look after her pretty much 24 hours a day, and didn't really have time to even come out and piddle with this thing at all. So this kind of got put on the back burner, and then in January, I was diagnosed with cancer, and so, you know, that was the end of that. I didn't do much of anything to it after that, and then in February I had surgery, and it's just been one thing after another. So last week, I guess it was, I had a pretty good week, and the temperatures was cool here in Virginia. wasn't too hot, and unlike today, it is kicking my butt out here today. I worked on it right much last week, I think the week before that, and last week is when he gave me the motor, and that kind of motivated me. The motor, him giving me the motor, kind of kicked me in the butt and said, hey, you need to get that thing finished and get those rocks cleaned. So I went on and picked up the plyboard day before yesterday, got it screwed up on there, and now she seems to be done. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below and I'll try to answer them. If it's something that I didn't show in the video and you'd like to see it, you can just shoot me a comment in the comment section, and I'll try to answer it the best I can. And I hope everybody's having a good 4th of July weekend. I'm just kind of hanging out around the house and not really doing a whole lot, so it's you know, just another day. Anyway, y'all take care, and I appreciate you guys watching.
Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.